Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I am your host, Patrick Vallejos, broadcasting to the world live from Phoenix, Arizona. Today, we are going to open up discussion for the Abby and Libby case out of Delphi. Been working on a documentary all morning, so I needed a break. So I figured we would go live and I would check in with my peeps. So there's a lot of information kind of being spread around, some true, some of it misinfo, a lot of theories, a lot of bias. So today we're not going to have an agenda. We're going to focus in on the chat and we're going to have a very casual conversation. Anything goes, guys. But I do want to welcome in my guy Farmer, Sandollar, MF Witchy Widow, Kitty, nice to see you. Ruckus, hope you're doing well. I know you're feeling a little bit down in the dumps, so I hope your health has improved. Jill, always good to see you. Charlotte, Sherry, Christine, Ziggy, Julia, welcome. Zoe, Audra, the Royal Wee, Mustang, Cheeks, hello. Patricia, welcome in, everybody. Good to see you, Sandollar. Libby's cell phone was on, not off. It was pinging all over town of 3-mile radius. If the phone was off, it would not signal to the towers, just like Brian Kay's case. Well, I'm not an expert, Sandollar. Are you? I mean, I hope so. You sound like one. What's up, Fiend? Welcome in. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. So I think one of the strangest things about this case is weeks leading up to the murders of Abby and Libby, you had somebody who was stalking and harassing. I don't know about stalking, but harassing Libby. And we know that from Max Snowberger, a good friend of Libby's. We now know that to be Keegan Kline, right? It was reported to be a 19-year-old. Well, we know for a fact now that that same person who was catfishing Libby said that in the account that he was using to catfish said that he was going to was supposed to meet her there that day, but she didn't show up. So that same person we now know has confessed to taking part in the murders, but yet it's like it doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. You have people focusing more on third-party suspects that were provided by the defense team, like Elvis Fields. Well, he confessed too. So we can take that confession, but we can't take Keegan Kline's or even Richard Allen's. We know that the girls were up late the day before they were murdered and up pretty early for teenage girls, right? 9:30, 10. That's pretty early for having a day off and staying up all night and wanting to go to the trails. So what's motivating them? I mean, how do we make sense of all of this? You know, everybody seems to be an expert. Expert on criminology, typology, psychopathy, cell phone towers, and tower pings. You know, everybody's an expert. Mustang says Mr. Steve did a test and the pinging was all over the place. It's not reliable. That's the way I understood it. I didn't need anybody to explain that to me. And I definitely didn't claim to be an expert. I just figured that that was common knowledge. Julia says Hannah Shakespeare. Shout out to Hannah Shakespeare. I second that. She did a great job with the documentary. Yeah, she was making breakthroughs before um, we really had any of this information. Apparently, Elvis Fields confessed to his sister. Um, but the defense wants us to believe that he's got some type of low IQ or might even be mentally handicapped or something like that. But when it comes to his confessions, they don't mention that part. You know, to me, it's obvious. If you're talking with law enforcement and they're questioning you, they're talking about DNA, you might just say something stupid. You know, you might just be trying to act like a normal person, or you think you're asking a good question. Like, oh, well, what if I spit on one of the girls and I could explain it away? Like, how does that, they might just be, if this guy's mentally handicapped, low IQ, he might ask a stupid question. But yet, when trying to eliminate him as a viable suspect, that part's not included. You exclude that, and there's just a whole lot of bias, I guess is what I'm trying to say, all around from me. And I'm honest about that. But I would consider Keegan Kline more of a viable suspect than Elvis Fields. We can actually connect Keegan Kline to the Delphi case. Multiple search warrants, the Anthony Schatz account, and his own confession, the Wabash River search. But it's like it's meaningless. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's all very strange. Good to see you, Beach Fairy. Hey, if that woman with an art degree can be an expert on ritual murders, of which none have ever been proven, then who says we can't all be experts? Right? We're all experts. From one expert to the next. This is now, the channel will be called the Expert Guild, and you are all part of it. All knowing. I'm omnipotent. She Warrior, good to see you. Yeah, they always conveniently leave out the context of what Elvis Field said about his spit too. It was right after giving a spit sample. Exactly. He's trying to seem like he's an intelligent person, or he's asking an intelligent question, you know. And if he did spit on one of the girls, wouldn't they have his DNA? Right? So, a lot of people use like these third party suspects the same way that the prosecution is using Richard Allen. So it's very strange. Why are they using the same techniques, but it's okay for them? It's like very hypocritical. And we can spend all day trying to explain away Richard Allen's involvement. We can do that. Because without that DNA, which I don't think that they have, it's going to be very difficult. Welcome in, Thin Mint. Yeah, simple guy is made to give a saliva sample, ask a stupid question because he genuinely wants to know if spit at a crime scene is a way to catch somebody. Yeah, he's curious. And if he's confessing to his sisters, and this is somebody that he seems very lonely to me, looking at his Facebook page and all of that kind of stuff, you know? So we talk about false confessions all the time, but his confession's not false, right? Richard Allen's confessions are false, but not Elvis Fields. Not this desperate, lonely, low IQ guy. His confessions are legit. But Richard Allen's, no. His 60 plus, no. He just wants attention too, even though he's getting all of the attention in the world right now. Now he wants to confess. Those, no. Coerced. Elvis Fields, no. That's a legit confession. Julie says, if you're in a legal bind, less is more. Plead the fifth, even if you're innocent. People can be so naive, and that's putting it nicely. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Mustangs or Ron Logan to me would be better than some Odinist sacrifice. Yeah, I think Ron Logan is an interesting person of interest. But to me, he doesn't match the description of the guy on the bridge. Richard Allen does. I would say even a Brad Holder matches the description of the guy on the bridge, except he's too tall, and I believe he had a beard at the time. But he definitely matches the description a lot more than Ron Logan does. Sandollar says, some say the phone was off. Who is some? And how do you know what was going on with the phone? You seem to know a whole lot. Nostradamus, motherfucker. Nostradamus. It's exhausting keeping up with so many experts, quite frankly. Yeah, that's why you don't have to. Degree in psych, but actually, I'm an expert in eye surgery. Anybody want some LASIK? Actually, I think I might need some LASIK. Computer screens are fucking with my eyeballs. Sleuth, exactly. There's never been a ritual murder. It's stupid. Makes me remember the fake satanic panic of the late 80s and early 90s. That I really don't agree with. Because just because you can't prove something or you haven't found evidence of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And a ritual murder would be something that would, I believe, it would be extremely pre-planned. So if you're pre-planning something, I believe you're going to come up with a way to hide that. But as far as people drinking blood and doing all that stuff, I think that that does happen more than we realize. Can I prove it? No. Do I have statistics to back it up? On the contrary, right? Hey, Cheeks, well, Dale Griffiths got his degree from a male in college in the West Memphis 3 case. I would say we have as much knowledge as him. I feel like he was pretty accurate, though, with what he was stating. Like, I tend to agree with what he was saying, especially with the Aleister Crowley stuff and all of that. What's up, JL? Grunge Truck, how you doing? I'm sure the defense is loving the fact that people still believe it's Ron Logan. I think that's driving them crazy, Grunge Truck, because it was their firm that represented Ron Logan. Rosie and Aki, I believe, are partners or were partners at the time. So it seems like a little bit of a conflict of interest, but what do I know? Audrey says, I'm looking forward to all the evidence the prosecution has. Yeah, and they're ready. They've been waiting patiently. Some people blame the prosecution for the delays. And if you believe that, you just haven't been watching what was going on, or once again, you're just projecting your bias onto us, because that's absolutely not true. And when it comes to Richard Allen's confessions, if he killed these girls, he's definitely a psychopath. And he's going to try to do his best to appear innocent. He's going to say things that he thinks an innocent man will say. He's going to use superficial charm. He's going to say shit like, you ruined my reputation and you're going to pay for what you did to my wife, as if he gives a shit, right? It's that whole chameleon act. Let me go ahead and present to you what I think what a normal person would be, how a normal person would be responding. Julie says, I do believe Richard Allen is involved at the very least. But when it comes to legal proceedings, all the information the public has at this time, I don't know what I would convict him if I were a juror. Absolutely not. Unless you can convince me unequivocally that there's a match between his unspent casing and that there's no issues with the chain of custody, because he puts himself there at the time of the murders. We haven't heard anything about his alibi, and that would connect him to the crime scene. Audrey says, I think he'll confess to his family, doesn't see any of the crime scene or hear all of the evidence. Well, what about the box cutter? We keep hearing people talking about box cutters, and, they're experts on box cutters now, and serrated blades. Well, considering they sell millions of serrated box cutter blades. Here's an example. And this will fit in any normal box cutter. This type of blade right here. Now, another thing, if the killer was using a box cutter like this, it is more likely that he's not going to injure himself. He's not making any stabbing motions. He's not in any kind of a struggle. He's most likely got his victim, Abby and Libby, pinned down and specifically going for the jugular artery, which they teach you in boot camp. You learn all about that, where to hit. So it fits with his profile. You got the box cutter with the serrated blade, right? Box cutter that he needs at his CVS job. We know that he unloads trucks. I used to do that for Walgreens, right? Twice a week, you have to unload a truck, and you have piles of boxes that not only that you have to open, but you have to cut up and recycle. It is just a tool that you have. It's a must-have tool that fits with the profile of Richard Allen. There's no DNA, no blood left, because he didn't cut his hand. Now, if he had a large knife, he was making stabbing motions, slicing motions, he's more likely to cut himself, during a struggle. But this small little blade here, all he has to do is pop it out right at the moment before impact and make his small cutting motions. And that is definitely enough to cut and sever that artery right in your neck. And that's my opinion. I don't know about I don't think they have any DNA, Grunge Truck. Hopefully those fibers and unknown hairs or animal hair, hopefully they have something with that. What's up, Frank? Hope they have some very good evidence. The bullet they found. Well, another reason I don't believe they have DNA is because during his interrogation, they didn't say we found your DNA at the crime scene. You know, that would have made him confess. Oh, you found my bullet and my DNA? Oh, well then you guys definitely got me. But if all you have is a bullet, man, you must have planted it there. Cuz I know for a fact you don't got my DNA. Cuz in my opinion, I believe that's why Libby's clothing was found in the creek. Fiend says, "How do we judge Richard Allen's confessions without knowing the actual words or details? Just use our imaginations." Well, Fiend, we're not part of the jury, so it's really not our duty. That's like saying, "Why don't we know everything about this case?" We're not supposed to. JL says, "I think the cell phone data is going to make or break the trial." Now, that to me seems like information that's going to be held a little bit closer when it comes to the prosecution. But DNA, why would you ever keep DNA a secret? Never once have I seen a case where the most incriminating piece of evidence is kept secret. It's not. Just like the bullet. The reason that Holman told Richard Allen about that bullet is because he knew it was going in that probable cause affidavit. He also knew it's the reason why he was going to be under arrest. Even though he was being detained and not officially under arrest, the moment that he got up and tried to leave, he would be arrested after they got those results. And remember, he was interviewed on the 13th, and then 2 weeks later, once they got the results, they arrested him. Even if they told him, "Hey, like, you're not under arrest." Because technically you're not. But the second you get up and you try to walk out of here, you will be. And they never once mentioned, "Well, we have your DNA and your bullet." Because if they did, he would have confessed right then and there. But he took steps to make sure that his DNA was not there. Sherry says Holder too tall. I agree. He's too tall. He is too tall. He's not, I think he's only like 2 inches shorter than Ron Logan. Ron Logan is not as tall as people think he is. I believe he's like 6 foot, maybe 6'1". And I believe Brad Holder is 5'10". Hey, Pipers, good to see you. Fiend says I'd research the LASIK truthers. A bunch of people claim permanent damage. I had a few coworkers that got LASIK, and they talk highly of it. But I would definitely do my research before I did anything like that. Grunge says it's gotten to the point where everything is a conspiracy. Well, for some, it's a conspiracy, right? Because a lot of people, they may not even realize it, but they are dark-hearted, and they're supporting Richard Allen because that's where their dark heart is leading them. It's almost as if he is now the victim, right? They're finding ways to explain everything else away because he's a poor little victim. The most viable suspect, he has a group of cheerleaders. For whatever reason, they've forgotten about Abby and Libby. And by no means am I saying blindly follow law enforcement, because I'm not a huge fan. I know that they can be diabolical, and conspiracies are real. You know, you got people being framed, you got people with false confessions. And although false confessions are a real thing and they have happened and they have put innocent people in prison, it's not like they don't investigate. They don't just say, "Oh, you confessed. We got our guy." That's not how it works. That's just not the way it works. They still have to go out and prove it. You can't sit in a courtroom and say, "Oh, well, he confessed, judge. He did it." Okay, well, what's his alibi? Well, we have 6 people who said he was at work at the time. Okay, well, this is obviously a false confession. They're not just going to blindly take a confession. That's just not realistic. I think I found the resolution to my problem. Need to stop staring at these computer screens so much. Yeah, and if Richard Allen's responsible for this murder, he's not going to sit in that interview room. He's had 6.5 years to kind of come up with a good story, right? Oh, you found my bullet? Well, you must have put it there. You never hear about Holman mentioning DNA to him. And you're definitely not going to convince me that he wouldn't. That would be all over that probable cause affidavit. We have your DNA, right? An unknown, it's like this person had never committed a crime before, just like Richard Allen. But we have your DNA. There's no way you can convince me that they're going to keep that secret until the trial. Because if Richard Allen knew that, he would most likely confess right then and there. Okay, so you have my bullet. I didn't know about that. And you have my DNA. Okay, well, I'm pretty much screwed then. No more superficial charm at that point because it's done. He would come forward. Because if he knows he's caught, he needs to remain in control of what's happening. The only way for people to remain in control is to confess or lead the discussion. Like, hey, we're going this way now. We're going down this path of confession. Follow me. I'm going to dangle a carrot in front of the investigation. Like, here, come on, come with me. Grunge says, I do believe in some conspiracy, but not in every case. Yeah, not in every case. Like, you got to try to keep it simple, at least at first. Cheek, Sleuth Intuition, I think some of what was said very accurate, but his opinion on the evidence and that case I felt was very biased. Oh yeah, he's definitely biased and he was trying to help paint that picture. But I think a lot of what he was saying with the West Memphis 3 case was pretty accurate. So that's why the judge despises the defense. I don't think that the judge despises the defense team. That's just something that people um, make up in their own mind. If you think that, it's completely ridiculous. But you're entitled to your own opinion. And that's just mine. Grunge says Richard could easily get off if they don't have some more evidence that is profound. I think that is possible. And I also believe that even if they don't have DNA, it doesn't mean that they don't have, let's say, the girl's DNA found somewhere on Richard Allen's property or in his vehicle or something to connect the girls, right? I don't think that they need DNA. They already have his confessions. They have him admitting to being there at the time, looking like the bridge guy. And they arrested him not because of DNA, but because of the unspent bullet. They have that. That's extremely damning. So if they have anything else, and I don't think the prosecution would come forward, there's no need for him to lay his cards out on the table. He's waiting for trial. That's what he does. That's where he's going to lay it all out there. Now, the defense, everything is pre-trial. They're going to be up to all kinds of shenanigans. And we've seen that. And I don't blame them for that. If I hired them to defend me, they better be doing the same thing. TJ says, I think the cops would have loved for this to be an Odinist cult or a giant pedo sex ring. I think it's why it took them so long to find the killer in their backyard. Yeah, that could be true. This was the first time they've ever seen anything like that. They told us that over and over again. Be patient with us. We've never seen anything like this. Basically a bunch of rookies when it comes to this kind of a horrific crime, and their pride might have gotten in the way. Like, we can handle this. Well, obviously you can't, because you fucked up the only tip that mattered, apparently. Yeah, they would have loved to have, 6 guys arrested, all these bad dudes. And I'm not saying none of that is true. I'm not, because I don't know. But if it is, I still believe Richard Allen is part of it. He just happened to be the guy out on the bridge that got caught on camera. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for sponsoring today's live stream. Welcome in, Super Sleuthy. He has no alibi. Well, he says he left around 1:30. Okay, if you left around 1:30, where'd you go? I mean, we don't hear anything about that. Where'd you go? Because if he had an alibi, then he's innocent, right? Or we could definitely lean more towards that, believing that, especially if there's no DNA. But everything, the more that we learn, the more that it fits with the Richard Allen profile, even the box cutter. Hey, Rain Dancer. Did the defense have his confession thrown out? No. They tried to. And I'm sure they might get some of it thrown out. There was some people who were locked up with him who were saying, yeah, he was confessing to us. I don't know how reliable those statements are going to be. But the fact that he confessed to his wife and mother, I mean, that's huge. And he's telling medical professionals that he used a box cutter. I don't remember hearing anything about deep stab wounds from a knife. Everything was right at the neck. If you were trying to end somebody's life with a box cutter, that's what you would do. You would go right for the main artery. You're not going to stab somebody with a box cutter. You might swing it and slice it at them, but that's not going to kill them for sure. It most likely might, because I mean, those things are very deadly. But if you've planned this out and you're Richard Allen cutting boxes twice a week unloading, trucks, and you've used a box cutter for so long that you've now moved over to serrated blades. You know for a fact that if you're going to use that weapon, and you can't use your gun, even though you're using the gun to control the girls, you can't use the gun because you don't have a silencer. If you pull that trigger, all you're doing is setting an alarm and bringing attention to where you are. And you know that there's people on the bridge now. You can hear somebody yelling for Libby. Where are you? Libby. Her dad. He went down under the bridge and he said he yelled for the girls. He was hollering for them. So the wounds, in my opinion, are consistent with the box cutter. Very specific. And also when you go to boot camp, they teach you about using your bayonet, and where to strike with a blade. They teach you to go for the artery. We now know that Richard Allen spent some time in the military. I mean, everything is telling us that it is Richard Allen. And also, a box cutter is going to keep you from cutting your hand. Right? You pull it out right at the last moment. You make your you make your cuts or whatever you're trying to do, and then you put the blade back in, and you're out of there. Well, who uses a box cutter? People that work at CVS. We heard from Richard Allen's coworkers that they would the only time they really ever worked side by side with Richard Allen was when they were unloading trucks. Right? You can't unload trucks without that box cutter. You just can't do it. You needed to open the boxes, you needed to cut the zip ties on the totes, and you needed to cut the boxes down for recycling. And the fact that there was no DNA left at the crime scene tells me that it was most likely used because of that box cutter. That small little blade is less likely to cut your own hand if you're the assailant, right? You're not making any stabbing motions or doing anything like that. You're doing precision cuts to a very specific area, and both victims suffered that same wound. I mean, we can pretty much see in front of us what happened and who did this. Me too, Pipers. Me too. Thank you, Beach, with the Scrub Report. If you guys haven't hit the like button, please do. And if you could share the video, we're going to be here probably another 30 minutes. Maybe we can get some more folks in here. Sela says, we don't know for sure it is a serrated blade. We have only heard that from... No, I think we heard that in court. I've had people who were there sending me their notes, and it was stated that I think it was the coroner, believes that a serrated blade was used. Now, when you cut flesh with a serrated edged blade, it's going to leave a certain type of wound. And if you rub that same bloody blade on anything, like let's say clothing or skin, it's going to leave the mark, a serrated looking mark. Good to see you, CJK. All right, you guys talk amongst yourself. I'm going to be right back. Alrighty. Still going to be blood everywhere. Absolutely. But not his blood, the victim's blood. TJ says, I think members of law enforcement were using this case the same way the defense is. How many books have been written about this already? A handful. Thin Mint. I guess I didn't realize box cutters were serrated blade. Yeah. And I think the only person who's going to select a serrated blade, and I don't know if it's pricey or what, but that's definitely probably somebody with experience. You know, maybe getting tired of going through so many blades, because that's one thing I remember about it. You know, after maybe halfway going through a truck like that, you need another blade, or you're running the risk of cutting yourself, you know? So I could see somebody who's been doing that for some time switching to a serrated blade, which isn't hard to find. They're right next to all the regular razor blades. Go look it up in Home Depot if you want to. Fits with the Richard Allen profile, in my opinion. Thanks, Zoe. Hooking somebody up with a membership. Appreciate that. Phoenix says, so the wounds are only an inch deep? That I don't know. That I do not know. I just haven't heard anything about any deep stab wounds. Early on, we heard like Abby was stabbed in the chest and blah, you know, all this weird stuff. But now we know that's just not the case. Yeah, and about him being under some kind of induced psychosis. We also heard in the courtroom, well, from the notes that I've read, that those people who were there to diagnose him, they believed he was faking. And a pure psychopath is somebody who can fake that. They're going to do their best to appear to be crazy or to be um, what is expected of them. Thin Mint says, Grunge, Richard Allen's wife didn't say anything about him burning things, though. I don't think that she said anything. I don't think she knows anything. Thank you, Juliet, with the super chat. Only time I've heard a box cutter being used was 9/11. Playing devil's advocate with my personal opinions. Might allude to this not being premeditated. I think through the eyes of Richard Allen, I think it makes it seem more premeditated. Just considering that he worked at CVS. Okay, I just typed in attacked with a box cutter, and just in the last 3 months, we have 4 cases. Man threatened to cut victim's guts out with a box cutter. 11-year-old girl slashed with the box cutter. Box cutter attack caught on Ring video. New York PD, teens attacked man with a box cutter in subway station. These things are extremely deadly. And I literally just typed this in, and then it's all from 2024. Took me 2 seconds. Thank you, Hathers. Good to see you, by the way. CJK says, what's interesting is those who refuse to believe Alan is capable but have no proof anyone else murdered the girls, but no way is it Alan. Well, I think it boils down to critical thinking, right? But if you're being biased, you're not being critical. You just think you are. Hey, what's up, Crimezilla? Good to see you. Hey, Hiawatha. There are conspiracies in this world. I do agree with that. And I think most of the conspiracies, they're not going to get caught. So if there are ritualistic killings, because we know this world is filled with Satanists and people who follow the dark arts and the occult and things like that. So I think it does happen, but it most likely happens behind closed doors with a high amount of pre-planning. Thank you, Hathers. It's good to see you, Redfoot. How you doing? What you got going on? I'm going to try. But those that falsely confess do it 60 plus times. And the thing is, the people that normally provide a false confession are people that were berated for hours and hours and hours, and they're considered low IQ or suffering from some kind of disability, you know, or they come forward because they want the attention, like, hey, I'm the killer. And that has happened. It happened in the Happy Face murders, where the killer actually got pissed off because somebody had confessed. And one was released and the female is still in prison, or she was in prison for a few more years after that. But they didn't really even have an explanation for why they confessed. But it took the real killer to come forward saying, hey, like, these aren't your folks. I'm the real killer. You guys ever heard of Keith Jesperson? Here, let me pull up this article that I have saved here. It's titled How a Woman's Plot to Frame Boyfriend for Murder Let a Serial Killer Continue His Spree by Kyler Alvord, published in 2021. Laverne Pavlinak and her boyfriend John Sosnovsky spent 4 years in prison for murder they didn't commit. In 1990, Laverne Pavlinak had reached her breaking point, feeling stuck in an abusive relationship with a boyfriend nearly 20 years her junior. The 57-year-old woman from Portland, Oregon decided she'd go to extreme lengths to escape his orbit. When Pavlinak heard that a young woman named Tanya Bennett had been strangled to death in her hometown, she saw the unsolved murder as an opportunity to put her boyfriend John Sosnovsky behind bars. So she framed him for Bennett's murder. First, Pavlinak anonymously called investigators claiming that she overheard Sosnovsky at a bar bragging about killing the 23-year-old. Then she said she knew Sosnovsky was guilty because she was there when he raped and killed her. thus implicating herself in the false narrative. Pavlinak's elaborate lies about the murder were enough to convince a jury that both she and Sobnowski deserved to be imprisoned for Bennett's death. With Bennett's believed killers behind bars, investigators put her murder investigation to rest, unaware that the real culprit was running free, continuing to kill. In 1995, Keith Hunter Jesperson was widely known by his nickname, the Happy Face Killer. Turned himself in and confessed to several murders across 5 states. His first victim, he said, was Bennett. See, why did they do it? I don't know, but it doesn't typically happen the way that it's happening with Richard Allen. That much I do know. Good to see Crimezilla. Welcome in, everybody who's just joining us. Let's go to Sand Dollar. The PCA was written before any testing of DNA on anything in the car or home. What do you mean? You don't think that they took Richard Allen's DNA on the 13th? That's the day they served the search warrant. So you have a search warrant affidavit, and then you have an affidavit for arrest. Or the same thing that just kind of evolves. His alibi is that he was at that bridge when the crimes occurred. It's his only alibi as far as anyone knows, and has confessed over and over again. Yeah, but was he under psychosis? The doctors don't agree with that. They think he's faking it. Fiend says, Sleuth, do you think it's possible Richard Allen was influenced by paranormal forces, like on Twin Peaks? Maybe in his mind. Have you heard anything about expert voice analyst? No. I don't know if the video or the audio is going to be presented in court or not. I just think it was used by investigators in hopes that the family would come forward. But I also feel that they had enough probable deniability with the way the investigation was conducted and the fact that Richard Allen came forward early on. And I think he's showing a level of sophistication or some kind of a higher IQ than these normal killers by doing that, by knowing how important it was to do that. Sleuth, turn the brightness down or use dry eye drops, because when you look at the screen, I have everything set. I have all the settings the way they're supposed to be. It's still just affecting me. But these glasses help. It was almost like I had astigmatism. Like at night, all the lights would look kind of blurry. But that went away once I started wearing these. Took about 2 days, but it worked. So I'm happy about that. CJK says, I don't think Alan is a dumb guy either. Either do I. Either do I. I think he's conniving and very sinister. I agree with that. And I think that's why he was in that interview with Holman and he was saying the things that he was saying. It's all superficial charm. You're going to pay for what you did to my wife. You know, he's trying to act like an innocent man. And if all they have is the bullet, why not? Why not act that way? Beach Fair says Baldwin tried to get Goal off another case. He's working because he claims she might hold a grudge against him. because of the Richard Allen case. When this is what judges do, they see the same lawyers often in case. Yeah, that's all bullshit. All the Richard Allen fan club, they hate Gull because she's not Gull able. You know what I mean? Like they are. And I'm not saying believe the prosecution, but they're not going to present their case until trial. Have we seen a trial? No. Give them an opportunity to present their case before you just start throwing your pom poms in the air for a suspected killer who is legally behind bars because of actual evidence, not this Elvis Fields. If I spit on the girls, okay. Well, first of all, if he spit on the girls, they would have his DNA, right? So that should be where that ends. Hather says, I know it was said early on that they had DNA, but it wasn't something one would normally think. I don't remember them saying that. I remember YouTubers and people discussing the case saying something like that. The prosecution is very silent about most of it. Well, they're not silent, they're just being patient. They have no motivation to go blabbing about their case. Their audience is a jury and a judge. That's it, not the public. Jill says Richard Allen is acting crazy, but he is not crazy. Yeah, it's not the first time that's ever happened. Hey, Sherry, the judge threw defense off the case. Goes to Supreme State Court, and they are reinstated. Well, that's the way it was supposed to happen. With that certain circumstances, that's how it should have played out. And that wasn't her fault. She handled it perfectly. It went to the Supreme Court, got resolved, and now we're back on track. That's why we have the Supreme Court for situations just like that. It's not like she's out to get them. Hather says, I think Nick is doing great with this case and keeping the cards close to his chest. Well, the thing is, we don't know how Nick is doing because he hasn't done anything yet. You have to wait for trial to determine how Nick is doing. He's doing what he should be, which is not leaking any information. But as far as how he's doing on the case, we don't know yet because we're not at trial yet. That's what the family and investigators and Ives and McClellan have been telling us. Finding the suspect is only half the battle. The other half is, getting that conviction. Yeah, I agree with that, Beach Fair. Julia says there's a video that alludes to sexual motivation. Well, one of the confessions, I think to Dr. Walla, he stated that he was motivated by by SA or to sexually assault them, and that he panicked, right? So the same thing that caused him to panic, which would be the embarrassment of, his family finding out, is the same thing that's keeping him quiet now. The reason why he hasn't officially confessed, as far as writing down a statement or requesting another interview with Holman where he confesses on video. Lula says, where was Richard Allen's wife during the hours? Probably at work. And remember, there was a lot of chaos going on in their lives at the time, which is another reason that fits with the profile, right? If you've watched as many killer confessions as I have, lots of times this is what they say, I don't know why I did it. I was extremely stressed out. That's the answer. When you're a psychopath, do you really need an answer? Not from what I can tell. Not most of them have an answer. Like, why'd you do it? I don't know. I look at people as if they're objects. That's why I did it. Sherry says, stays in my mind that State Trooper Ferenczi investigation of the Rushville group. He was baited out of the post and shot when he came out the door. Well, he wasn't baited. That was a political attack on that office by somebody who was actually running for mayor. It wasn't some kind of Vinlander group or anything like that. And anybody that tries to paint that, all they're doing is putting their bias on display, and they're just projecting. He came out because he was a hero. That's why. He didn't come out because he was lured. His office was under attack. They didn't attack him because he was part of the Delphi investigation. We're going to lure him out and we're going to kill him because he's on our trail. Like, this isn't a Hollywood movie, guys. You got to get your head out of the sand with that kind of stuff. If they wanted to kill him, they wouldn't have attacked a police station where there's tons of guns and trained people to handle that situation. I mean, come on, think about that. We got to take this guy out. He's getting close. We should hit him where it's the most dangerous for us. No, the guy who did the attack was making a statement. It was basically an act of terrorism is what it was. Had nothing to do with Delphi. But when you are dark-hearted and you feel like you need to pull out the pom-poms for Richard Allen, who is the only viable suspect, you start to say shit like that. To me, it's textbook projecting. And you don't care about Abby and Libby, but you care about Richard Allen. And you're willing to stretch the truth for that, but not for the girls, which you shouldn't either. But don't do it under the guise of critical thinking, because there's nothing critical about it. It's just bias on display. Charlotte says, I'm inclined to believe they do have some bodily matter. I don't think that they do. I really don't. Now, as far as possibly a trophy or something like that found, that could be being kept hidden until trial. Because remember, the defense isn't motivated to release anything damning against Richard Allen. And the prosecution isn't, the prosecutor's not motivated to release anything because his battleground is in a courtroom during that trial. So here on the 23rd, when they have that status hearing, they're going to talk about everything. That's why I believe that you guys will see a plea bargain or the beginning of the negotiations for one. There may be one offered. There's a good chance that it'll be declined and the negotiating will begin. But the same thing that caused Richard Allen to panic and kill Abby and Libby could be the very reason that he doesn't want to come out and openly confess. He's probably shocked at how long he's been able to hold out on that. He's probably grateful to his defense team for, he's still in his mind, he's not the killer, right? He's like an evil villain. I'm the bridge guy. But they don't know that. I'm like Batman. I'm like the evil Batman. But that's all slowly coming to an end. And Judge Gull was worried about him not being acclimated to prison life. He didn't have a criminal history, never spent a day in jail. He's talking about hurting himself. Good to see you, Melissa. Kitty says, do we know if Abby was stabbed in the heart? If so, that would be a knife. Yeah, I brought that up a little bit earlier. We heard that, but that wasn't mentioned in court. They talked about these certain types of wounds, nothing being enough to penetrate like a chest cavity. Audra says, makes me sick. We all went there and got our medicine from him and never thought it was him. Well, you can't blame yourself. People like that go through great lengths to hide. If he is a psychopath, he's known that for a very long time. The first time he decided to cut open an animal and all his friends freaked out, he knew right then things that he thought were fun were terrifying and horrific to the people around him. That's how they become everything becomes internalized and fantasy driven. Because the world that they see is not the world that we see. They're different. They feel like a mutant. Like, I don't know why my family's sad about this. I have no clue why. I don't even know why they're concerned about it. Or like family annihilators. Yeah, I just wanted to get it. I got rid of my old family and I started a new one. And the only reason they had a family to begin with is because they know that that's what normal people do. Or they're just planning on wearing it as camouflage. I mean, that really depends, Miracle. I mean, I don't know any retail places that don't have people working on a Monday. Sandollar, who's they? And when did they say that? Yeah, BDK was married with kids. And also, if Richard Allen is a fantasy driven killer, if anything happens that destroys that fantasy, it may remove the sexual aspect of it. Maybe he in the fantasy they do exactly what he tells them to. And the moment that they don't, it's not going according to plan. Now he could become furious. So you're telling me I just kidnapped you and told you I was going to sexually assault you, and now you're ruining everything. They could become extremely agitated. Welcome in, Christine. Yeah, Julie. I mean, the guy who created the Anthony Shots account, the same guy that Abby told her friend Max that was bothering her and that she needed help with. And then eventually she said, "Oh, well, I have it resolved. I figured it out." The same guy who said, "I was supposed to meet that girl there that day, but she never showed up." Well, at least somebody's saying that on the account that he created. Also, we now know confessed to being part of the actual murders, being in Delphi that day, and also implicating his father. I mean, does that mean anything? That means nothing. Yep, exactly. It's camouflage. We know that the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, he would show his victims his ID, like, "Hey, look, this is who I really am." But what he was really doing was showing them pictures of him and his family next to the ID. Like, "Hey, I'm not lying. Like, this is my name. Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you." And then when he would show his ID, there's photos of his children. And then the guards come down. Like, "Oh, you're a family man. Okay. You're not going to hurt me." But that's what a psychopath does. They know that normal people who have families aren't out there killing people and kidnapping 100 plus women and raping and murdering them and throwing rocks on top of their dead body to weight them down in a local river or lake. Normal people don't do that. But he knows that normal people might think that. Same way Richard Allen could have been telling Jerry Holman what he thinks an innocent man would say, right? "Oh, you're going to pay for this. You're ruining my reputation." It's superficial. Hey, Charlotte, about Libby's cell phone, isn't it probable that it was just in contact with water and took time to dry? That's what I believe. But the only reason I believe that is because people who have actually had the iPhone 6 and multiple people that don't know each other that have been following my channel for years have told me, "Hey, I had an iPhone 6 and I had similar things happen." But I'm not an expert, but that's what I think happened. We have the girls, what appears to be crossing the water, wet clothing. I mean, who's to say the phone didn't get wet or something like that? But to paint a picture like somebody came out there at 4 a.m., grabbed the phone, turned it on. I mean, why would they do that? Oh, well, you want to know why they did that? It's because they photoshopped and created a fake video of the bridge guy. That's why they did it. They took Libby's phone, and then when they brought it back, they wanted it to be found. But Richard Allen being the killer, that's not realistic, but that is. It's just that kind of shit that's just obvious. The bias is on display. People are projecting. So you have to keep yourself in check. Let me zip on down here. Hey, Birdbrain says, "Do you think they will ever stand trial?" No, I think during the status hearing, they're going to begin negotiating a deal. Because I don't think all cards are out on the table yet. There's still things that need to be handed over from both sides. And then once the defense team can advise their client of what to expect and what the consequences are of certain types of deals, if they don't have all the evidence, they can't advise him on that. But it'll be the beginning there of the plea deal. I believe that this will never go to trial, and then I think Richard Allen will confess officially, or at least plead guilty. Let's give a shout out to Hathers Mirror with the 8-month flex and a $3 super sticker. Thank you guys. And we have a super chat from Julia Burns, Golf for President 2024. Thank you, Farmer. Yeah, box cutter is a horrific weapon. You know, it's going to leave about an inch deep laceration and cut through flesh like butter, especially if it's new and serrated. Yeah, that's no joke. Walking with a gun and a box cutter on a sunny February afternoon, putting up a mask and saying down the hill. I agree with that, Rain Dancer. It seems pre planned to me. It seems pre planned by somebody who frequented that area. We know that that was Richard Allen. The types of wounds, they seem consistent with a box cutter. We didn't hear about any deep stab wounds. Everything was attacked, some to the face, I believe, and slicing to the neck, which can be done with a box cutter. Who carries a box cutter? People who unload trucks at places like CVS. Sub Rosa, what's up? I don't even understand where these Rick Allen supporters are coming from. Well, they're claiming not to be Rick Allen supporters, but just critical thinkers. You know, they're trying to put themselves in his position, saying, hey, if this was me, but they're not being honest and they're not being critical about anything. They're just being biased and they're projecting their dark heartedness, I guess you can call it, is what it is what my opinion is. Yep, Ellen Greenberg is a case we've covered extensively, and we will again here in the future. There's a new interview with the concierge that the fiance said walked with him up to the door when he first was knocking on the door. That concierge says that he was lying. So we definitely want to have a discussion about that. And that'll probably be Tuesday or late Monday night. Hey, Courtney, do we know what Richard Allen's work schedule was that week? I don't. It's a good question, though. Super Sleuthy says it will be interesting to hear the jailhouse phone call audio of him confessing. Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with the transcripts, but none of that's going to be made public until after he's convicted. And then I'll just make a FOIA request and we'll have it here on the channel. It'll most likely be leaked out before I even have to do that. Either have I, Sub. Oh, yeah. Another 6 serial killer. They're out there, guys. They're amongst us. Yeah, he reminds me of Rifkin and Kemper for sure. Very similar. Beachfrey says people will swear Richard Allen is being set up, but in a case that seems there is obvious corruption, yeah, Ellen Greenberg is a good example. Her family struggled to get noticed. Yeah, they try to say it's a conspiracy and that um, the conspiracy is some kind of Freemasonry thing, right? Nick is protecting his brother Brad Holder, who apparently is confessing to his ex-wife. So it doesn't seem very helpful. Yeah, don't worry about that, sub. Don't worry about what people call you. I agree, Charlotte. Hey, Emily, how are you? You would think they took his DNA at that time. I guarantee they did. They probably took it off a water bottle or something like that. Can I get you something to drink, Mr. Allen? Yeah, get me a Coors Light and a Marlboro cigarette. Sure. Give me a second. Malingering Rick Allen and his fan club. And we don't know if Rick Allen is guilty. All I'm here to argue is that he is the most viable suspect by far. If, and I say this, if that bullet casing matches his gun. Because it's one thing to put yourself on the trails, and then it's another thing for a scientific piece of evidence ties you to the actual crime scene. And then you don't have an alibi? That's the only reason he's under arrest. Has nothing to do with DNA. They don't, they don't have his DNA. They don't. That's just my opinion. They're not going to keep that from the public. They want the public to get behind him. If anything, that's the reason they kept it sealed. That and the dueling stuff, and the age of the witnesses. They didn't want them to be berated. But I think the lack of DNA, Doolin's fuck up, and the age of the witnesses is the reason they wanted to keep it sealed. But if you have DNA, that's the first thing you say. We have your DNA there. You want to tell me what happened? Not only do we have your DNA, we have we have your bullet. Remember when we searched your home and we got your gun? Well, guess what? It was a match. Everybody that sat in that courtroom and heard about the Holman interviews and that kind of stuff, there was no discussion about DNA. And if they had his DNA, they would talk about that. Why don't they have his DNA? Because he most likely used a box cutter, which didn't cut his hand. He wasn't doing any erratic stabbing or crime of passion type stuff, where there's like 80 stab wounds, where they're just in a fit of rage. No, it was very precise on both girls. And if Abby is the one that's on that bridge and Libby is already off the bridge filming, like, come on, hurry up. That guy's right behind you. He's got a gun. Well, it's the first time she's been on the bridge. She's struggling. He most likely grabbed her. And as far as the hoodie and all of that stuff, we don't know what happened. From the first photograph at 2:03 or 2:05, the girls weren't confronted for another 10 minutes. We don't know if they swapped jackets. You don't know. Maybe she wanted to wear it in a picture or something. But he most likely grabbed her, and while she was in his arms, controlled them all the way across that creek. Well, why would they cross the creek? Because that's the way he planned it. For all you know, he practiced that in ice cold water. Well, I find it hard to believe that a killer is going to go through ice cold water. Oh, but you can conceive that he's going to kill two girls in the middle of the day in broad daylight. Anybody that's capable of doing what happened to Abby and Libby is 100% crazy enough to maybe even choose to go through ice cold water. Gullible. That's what we're going to call it. All right, let me zip on down here. That's right, Beach. There's no gain for them to air out. Only gain would be from the defense team, tainting future juries, swaying public opinion. And remember, they wanted people to start digging. The defense says, hey, we want you to dig. Give us everything you got. Redfoot says, with 60 confessions, not all of them can be explained away as psychotic episodes. I don't think any of them can be. He would have to be deemed incompetent, and he wasn't. I agree with that. And we're about to learn just how fucked they are, Redfoot, during the status hearing. Badass American. Alan knew how to use guns if he was in the National Guard. He did know how to use guns. He also knew how to use knives and exactly where to cut you. They literally train you on where to hit somebody in the neck, in the jugular. Both girls were hit at that exact spot. I haven't heard anything about any type of long knife or anything like that. Hey, Kelly, how are you? Yeah, that stuff that happened with Ferenczi, that had nothing to do with Delphi. And if you believe that, you're not even in the building of reality. I think we might have at least a foot in the building. I mean, you're not even in the city of reality. You may not even be in the state. You may not even be on the planet. You may be stuck in orbit in that Tesla. All right, let's zip down here. Hey, welcome in, Sean. Let's go to some of these newcomers here. Hey, Sleuth, it's been a while. I've been very busy after going back to work. Hope you're well. I am well. It's good to see you. Redfoot, I'm curious to whether either of the girls had water in their lungs. I believe one of them did, from my understanding, but I could be wrong. I think maybe Libby did. But don't quote me on that. 6 rounds. Oh, man. Yeah, he definitely had a fantasy. We're talking about a quiet guy. And there's a lot of psychopaths who don't have any criminal records. They got married right out of high school and they kill their entire family because they got a new girlfriend. Because they look at people as objects. And I'm not talking in like as a cliche. They literally look at people as objects, maybe even less than. Let's go to Charlotte. Trust the science. It's marvelous and evolving constantly. The good thing about science is that it proves science wrong. And most times, science will prove that science was wrong all along. Yeah, he definitely had a face covering. All right, this will be our 10-minute warning. Let's go to some newcomers in here. Aquarian, what's up? Yep, that's smart. And it's awful what's happening in Colorado, too. That just breaks my heart with these sanctuary cities. I mean, they just don't care about poor people. And it affects poor black Americans and brown Americans before it affects anybody. Do they care? No, because they're over there in their suburbs, in their little gated communities, and it doesn't affect them at all. But poor black and brown people that are struggling, yeah, we'll just send all these migrants over there from Venezuela and take over their entire apartment complex. Nobody cares. It's awful. Redneck Sleuth, may I ask why banter lions and badass are being timed out? I didn't know that they were. Oh, is it you again? I thought we blocked you. Are you being cool? Let me see some of these. You may have already been blocked. But yeah, if you come in here with like racist stuff, here, let me look at your message here. Let's see what you're talking about. Yeah, if it's relating to the Delphi case, you guys don't time these guys out. Don't make me take away your mod privileges. Don't get power hungry. But other than that, it's most likely because you deserved it. Not your mother's tarot. Does anybody know if Ron Logan had a farm? Yeah, he lived on a farm. The property that the girls were found on was a farm. Yeah, that was a great documentary on Evansdale. I suggest everybody go watch it. It's on Max. I think it's titled Taken Together. There's tons of new information. And all the old articles say that they didn't believe that what was his name? Clunder? Sorry. Wasn't involved, but now we know that Drew Collins believes that he 100% was. Hey, what's up, Renee? Good to see you. Coors Light. Coors Light. Let me get a Coors Light. Let's go to Brian. Welcome in, Brian Emery. I still believe Richard Allen targeted the girl, specifically Libby. I agree with that. On that day. The gun and box cutter, believe it or not, is not uncommon for Hoosiers, people from Indiana, to carry. But we don't cover our face. Yeah, his face was covered. He was overdressed, backed into the parking spot, walking with purpose. Broad daylight, dual kidnapping, which turned into a dual murder. I mean, the parts of this case that we don't know, I think Richard Allen is going to have to clear up. Julia says, I'm not ready to dismiss potential client involvement. I think there's more there. KK got the most years possible per his charges. I don't know if he has priors, but if not that, it's not typical. Well, I mean, he confessed. He confessed to taking part in the murders. And the only reason I believe somebody's going to accuse their father is because they were actually the ones guilty. What reason would you have to blame something on your father? Like the only person that's going to be there to support you, through your next 45 years in prison, you're going to go ahead and stab him in the back for no reason? Yeah, you might be right, Redneck. You might be right. Because even if he pleads guilty and they offer him a deal, doesn't mean he has to tell everybody what happened. And even if he decides to give more details, he's going to leave out all the stuff that makes him look bad, right? He's going to, all the stuff that he blames on Libby or why he was angry and what drove him to kill, he's going to talk about all that. But all the creepy shit he did online, any of the stalking or coveting, any of that, he'll just leave that out because it's going to make him look like a creep. And you better believe he has his reasons. They might not make sense to us, but if he did what he did, it's very likely that he is a psychopath. And he's going to have a very strange reason or no reason. He could have just been stressed. The pressure was overwhelming. I needed to get the power back. I'm so behind right now, Hathers. I'm not even sure what you're referring to. Yeah, mega $1 million neighborhoods with security. They don't care about real Americans, right? People who working those blue collar jobs. They just don't give a shit. What's up, Brad? Good to see you. What you up to? Yeah, science and math. Hard to argue with. Hard to argue with that. Something that can be 100% recreated. It's hard to argue when that's thrown right in your face. What's up, Pam? Yeah, let's only time out people if they're breaking the rules. They don't agree with your political standpoint, and leave them alone. Yep, I agree with that, Brian. Law enforcement saying that Richard Allen had a motive. We just don't know what it is. Hopefully, we will find some answers, even though it will not make things better. Nothing will make this better. There's no justice. There never will be justice. If Richard Allen killed Abby and Libby, there will never be justice for those girls. There's just a lightening of the load. Let's lighten up that load a little bit. At least you can do is give the family a little bit of peace, but justice, no. It'll never, it's not possible unless you got a time machine. And even then, you risk the butterfly effect and multiple timelines and things like that. Good to see you, Rescue. All right, I'm trying to zip on down, but to make sure everybody can participate in the chat. Cody, he blames his dad for Delphi because he thinks it's his dad's fault he's in prison now. Basically, he says TK was more responsible for the CSAM. I don't believe that. He says that he was participating, but as far as being more responsible, I don't agree with that. And I haven't seen any evidence. But we do know that the fact of the matter is Keegan Kline created the Anthony Shots account. That account was communicating with Libby. And he also confessed to taking part of the murders. Does that mean it's true? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to ignore that. Hey, what's up, Stephanie? Redneck only says, I haven't seen any evidence TK was part of CSAM. Either have I. I mean, I've seen evidence, but I haven't seen any proof. Let's go to Beach Fairy's question that I missed. I was wondering if you think that law enforcement were watching Richard Allen's online activity for a while before his arrest. I don't have an opinion about that. He doesn't strike me as an online guy, unless it's on his phone or something. Unless he had like a burner phone, or when his daughter moved out, he was on her tablet or her computer, or when his brother-in-law passed away, he was using his devices. You know, maybe his brother-in-law had access to the Anthony Shots account and he was accessing it, or just getting on Facebook maybe. Yeah, nothing compelling. I'll agree with that, Redneck. But just because we don't have anything compelling doesn't mean that it's not there. But I'll agree with that. All right, guys, we caught up on the chat. This will be our 5-minute warning. If there's anything else you want to add, like I said, this was going to be a casual conversation, trying to make sense of something so senseless. I want to thank Alex, Zoe, Julia, Hathers, and Julia. Thank you guys for sponsoring today's live stream. Brian says, I think Richard Allen was definitely into something shady by the look he gave Kathy when he surprised him in the parking lot. Yeah, what about Kitty brought up something in the comments. I think it was this morning about Richard Allen wanting to give his Bible to the family. Like, what the fuck is that? That just seems very dark. I couldn't make sense of that. Thank you, Hathers. Richard Allen did have a digital footprint. It's all there. Yeah, maybe he did. I haven't seen it. I don't get, and I'm not getting those vibes from him. I'm getting vibes of somebody who had a lot going on between September and February. September of 2016 and February of 2017. His daughter moves out, is getting married. That's huge, especially if you're an unstable person, right? Your favorite person is now gone. And then that same month, on the 27th of September, your brother-in-law dies. Now, this is somebody that is your wife's favorite person. She loved him dearly. So that, to me, that I'm going to assume that she began self-medicating, if not both of them. That's giving Richard Allen a whole lot of free time. And they are going back and forth to Peru. A lot of people don't talk about that. Well, where's Keegan Kline from? Peru. Don't you find it strange that the brother that passed away lives in Peru with his mother, who now needs to be taken care of from time to time by Richard Allen and his wife? I think that means something. So if Richard Allen's losing control, we're dealing with psychopathy here, potentially. He could have just snapped. He could have been fantasizing about it, right? And a lot of these killers, what we learn is they want to kill, they want to rape, but they don't know what MO they're going to choose, right? The Zodiac and a lot of these killers, they start out by stalking people out on the streets. They see a woman who's alone. It's dark out, and they get behind their vehicle and they start flashing their lights. You know, that's the tactic that they use to get their hands on their victim. So if Richard Allen was doing any homework and he's going through the scenarios, well, how is he going to get his hands on his victims? Is he going to get behind them and flash their lights? No, he needs a young victim. He needs an easy target. So, okay, well, how am I going to get my hands on this target? I'm going crazy. I can't stop. I need to get the power back. And I can't stop thinking about rape, and I can't stop thinking about murder. And if you guys remember when I covered the Shantae Blankenship, Ryan Riggs, her killer, who is a clear-cut case of psychopathy, no priors, no nothing. He said the darkness took over, and he all he wanted to do was rape and murder. He doesn't know why. Well, if Richard Allen is going through the same thing, trying to get his power back, some kind of control, and it does appear as if he did. If he's responsible for this, everything that's documented in his wife's Facebook from 2018 shows a different person, right? You don't see anything at the bars, you don't see anything. They're out on vacation, they're hiking. Richard Allen looks healthy. He has a little bit of muscle tone to him. Now, if you go look back at 2016, between October and December, this dude looks sick. He looks like he's on drugs. Very skinny. So if he has time to let his freak flag fly and he needs to get his power back, he's fantasizing about sexual assault and murder. Well, he's got to get his hands on a victim. How's he going to do it? Is he just going to run up and kidnap somebody in the middle of the day? Is he going to break into somebody's home? Or is he going to lure them to his favorite place where he's fantasized about for the last year or so? Who knows? You know, all I got to do is get somebody across this bridge. I'll bring them down the hill. I'll take them across this creek. I'll kill them and I'll wash my DNA off in this water right here. And I'll use my box cutter to do it. Oh, and then recently we heard that from the defense team that Brad Holder was stating that he was not interested in Asatru or Odinism or whatever you want to call it until after the girls were murdered or something like that. When we have proof that he was at that ritual in 2016 with Patrick Westfall. So I just don't understand why the defense continues to push proven lies. I mean, did they not catch my episode? Or are they just choosing to disregard the truth? Kelly says, yep, I believe he had a game plan and a fantasy. Yeah, for all we know, it went according to plan. Maybe the only part that didn't go according to plan was Abby. You know, he told her, go alone. And you can tell that Abby was struggling to cross that bridge. So if you motivate Libby, Libby will motivate Abby. Like, hey, I need you with me. I'm a little bit nervous. Well, you know, I can't cross that bridge. I've never crossed that bridge. I'm afraid to cross the bridge. You know, I'll be there with you. I'll take, you know, we'll take our time. In the photo and the video, you have Libby ahead of her while she's looking down and she's going step by step. So if she's already at the first platform at 2:05 and it's taking them 10 minutes for her to get to the fourth or fifth platform, not even completing the bridge in its entirety yet, she's struggling. So something has motivated her, and I think Libby motivated her. Like, hey, this guy tells me if you want to meet, I'm going to be over here on the south end of the bridge. Just, you know, well, I need you to come with me. You know, I can't go alone. So Libby is catfished and convinced that she's meeting a younger man. She, in turn, convinces her best friend to make that risky journey across that bridge. Therefore, Richard Allen is sorry about that part of it because she wasn't his target. And he probably blames Libby. When he finally confesses, I bet you that's what he says. It's her fault that Abby died. I told her to come alone. If she would have did what I said, she would still be alive. I guarantee that's his logic. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it. If you guys are part of that replay crew, let me know what you thought about today's discussion. And leave me a comment. If you need to get a hold of me, shoot me an email at sleuthintuition@gmail.com. Extra shout out to Alex, Zoe Kitty, Julia Burns, Hathers, and all of the mods. And I'll see you guys again real soon. Don't forget, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, we will be doing a deep dive into the Alexis Patterson case. So I hope to see you guys there with your input and your sleuth crew cap on. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about the case. It is unsolved to this day. So I'll see you guys again real soon. Peace.